I was sitting on the sofa, cracking sunflower seeds, and watching a television drama, when my stepmother kicked the door open and stormed in. Behind her came my precious half-sister, Yu Suan, crying so hard that the foundation on her face had cracked into flakes, like parched ground under a blazing sun. Yu Youwei, hurry up and get married. My stepmother shrieked loudly enough to rupture the eardrums of the neighbor's dog. I spat out a sunflower seed shell with a crisp snap and asked calmly, "What, did Yu Suan get pregnant by some random nobody? So now you want me to take the blame?" Yu Suan sprang up, as if she had been stung. "What nonsense are you talking about? I am a proper young lady. How could that happen? It is the Mu family, Mu Qianyu." Mu Qianyu, his name, had recently become the hottest topic in Beijing's upper circles. Rumor had it that he was the disfavored heir of the Mu family, violent by nature, and fond of beating his wife. People said his face had been ruined in a car accident, that he wore an iron mask all year round, and that he had an extreme obsession with cleanliness. He would cut off the hand of anyone who touched him. In short, in the eyes of outsiders, marrying Mu Qianyu was no different from taking up permanent residence in the underworld. The engagement had originally been arranged by my grandfather and old master Mu, when Yu Suan and I were children. Now that these terrifying rumors had spread, there was no way this mother and daughter would willingly jump into that pit of fire. "So you want me to marry him in her place?" I brushed the seed crumbs from my clothes and curled my lips into a smile. My stepmother crossed her arms and shamelessly said, "You are the eldest sister. You should know how to sacrifice for your younger sister. Suan is delicate and weak. What if that madman beats her to death after she marries over there? You are sturdier. You can probably take a beating better." What kind of logic was that? Did having thicker skin and more flesh mean I deserved to be beaten? My father sat on the sofa, took a long pull from his pipe, and delivered his verdict in a tone as cold as ice. "Wei, marry him. Marry him, Wei, and I'll give you 500 million for yourself. 500 million, to buy my whole life." That was insultingly cheap. I rose to my feet, looked the three of them straight in the eyes, and said, slowly, 2 billion, plus a complete severing of ties. From now on, whether I live or die will have nothing to do with this family. Agree, and I will climb into the bridal sedan. Refuse, and Yu Suan can go enjoy this blessing herself. Yu Suan glared at me. 2 billion? Why don't you just rob a bank? Then marry him yourself. I heard Mu Qianyu collects whips and candles. I tossed out the threat casually. Yu Suan's face drained of every trace of color. She clutched my stepmother's sleeve and nodded so quickly that she looked ready to snap her own neck. In the end, my father gritted his teeth and signed the agreement. I took the document, joy blooming in my chest. It did not matter whom I married, as long as I could escape this house where human affection had long since rotted away. With money I would have everything. Mu Qianyu. If he treated me well, we could live together. If he did not, I would divorce him. What was there to fear? There was no grand wedding procession on my wedding day. No relatives to see me off. The Mu family only sent a glossy black Bentley to fetch me. My stepmother and Yu Suan peered through the window, clearly convinced that I would either leave and never return, or return only in an urn. I dragged my suitcase into the car. The driver was a kind-looking middle-aged man. The moment he saw me, he smiled until his eyes narrowed. "Young madam, please get in. The master and madam have been eagerly awaiting your arrival." I paused. Waiting for me, so they could torment me. Car drove straight into an elite villa district in the suburbs. When the gates opened, I was stunned, not by the luxury, but by the bright red banner hanging above the front door, warmly welcoming our beloved daughter-in-law home. Roses carpeted both sides of the path. Several servants stood in neat rows, holding confetti cannons. Moment, I stepped out of the car. The cannons burst one after another. Glitter rained down over my hair and shoulders. A richly dressed middle-aged woman dripping with gold, silver, and jewels rushed over and threw her arms around me, as though I were a relative who had been missing for 20 years. Oh, my daughter-in-law. You are finally here. I have waited so long that my youth has withered away. I froze for 5 full seconds. This script was wrong. Wasn't my mother-in-law supposed to be cruel and picky about every little thing? Beside her stood a stern middle-aged man. But his eyes lit up when he looked at me like high beams. Come inside, child. Do not stand in the sun until you burn. Where is Qianyu? Why hasn't he come out to greet his wife? Hello, father. Hello, mother, I stammered. Mrs. Mu seized my hand and pulled me inside. Don't be scared. In this house, I am the one in charge. If Qianyu bullies you, I will cut off his allowance and make him sleep under a bridge. In the living room, I saw a man sitting in a wheelchair with his back to the door. This had to be Mu Qianyu, the ugly cripple from the rumors. Qianyu, hurry up. Your wife is home, Mrs. Mu said, giving the back of his wheelchair a firm pat. The man slowly turned around. At that instant, my heart skipped a beat. Not because I was afraid, but because he was far too handsome to be legal. His features were sharply defined, his brows clean and straight, his eyes bright, his nose high and perfectly straight. His thin lips looked cold and ruthless, yet impossibly alluring. Even seated in a wheelchair, he gave off the overwhelming bearing of a king. There were no scars, no iron mask. Yu Suan, were you blind? Or had water gotten into your brain? Such a masterpiece of a man, and you had rejected him. Mu Qianyu looked at me with dark, unreadable eyes. His lips curved slightly, and his low, warm voice sounded like a cello. Hello, my dear wife. The way he said, dear wife, sounded faintly mocking. I swallowed and forced myself to stay calm. Hello. Seeing the stiffness in the room, Mrs. Mu nudged her son. Smile. With that face, as gloomy as the bottom of a pot, you will scare your daughter-in-law away. Mu Qianyu sighed helplessly, glanced at his mother, and then looked back at me. His eyes softened a little. Sorry. My mother can be overly enthusiastic. Please, do not mind her. It is all right. Mother is very adorable, I answered honestly. See. My daughter-in-law says I am adorable. Mrs. Mu beamed. She immediately removed the jade bracelet from her wrist and put it on mine. A meeting gift. It is not worth much. Just wear it for fun. I was beginning to suspect that the pit of fire my stepmother had described was lined entirely with solid gold. Dinner that night unfolded in a strange atmosphere. My father-in-law kept placing food in my bowl. My mother-in-law sat beside me and cheerfully told embarrassing stories about how Qianyu had wet the bed as a child and skipped school to play at internet cafes. Qianyu sat beside me without changing expression. Every now and then, he glanced at me, silently signaling for me to put a chicken leg into his bowl. Eat more, I blurted out. You look too thin. I had only said it because no one else was serving him food. The whole table went silent. My father-in-law dropped his chopsticks. My mother-in-law's mouth fell open. The servants around us held their breath. Panic rose in me. Had I touched a forbidden subject? Was it his obsession with cleanliness? Mu Qianyu looked at the chicken leg in his bowl, then raised his dark eyes to me. Suddenly, the corners of his eyes curved with amusement. He picked up his chopsticks, took a bite, and said, "Thank you, wife. It is delicious." The whole room exhaled at once. Mrs. Mu grabbed my hand, her eyes shining with tears. "Yu Youwei, you must be a goddess sent down to save this family. In 20 years, no one has dared put food in his bowl. Not even me." I gave an awkward laugh. So the rumors were partly true. This man really was difficult. At night, I returned to the bridal chamber. It was vast and empty, decorated in cold grey tones. Exactly the kind of room one would expect from an overbearing CEO. I had just finished bathing and stepped out in a bath towel when I saw Mu Qianyu standing by the window. Standing. I rubbed my eyes. He stood tall and imposing, both legs straight beneath him. When he saw me staring, he turned around and walked toward me. He moved perfectly normally, without the slightest sign of disability. Your legs." I stammered, pointing at them. Mu Qianyu came close and backed me against the wall. The faint scent of sandalwood surrounded me. He bent toward my ear, and his warm breath grazed my neck, making me shiver. "What, are you disappointed that I am not disabled?" "Oh, no, I was only surprised." I tried to pull my neck back, my heart thudding wildly. This man was far too dangerous. I heard, "You accepted $2 billion to marry me," he said abruptly, his voice carrying a trace of danger. I stiffened. How did he know so quickly? Did this family's intelligence network have rockets attached to it? It was a fair bargain. I murmured. Mu Qianyu let out a low laugh that vibrated through his chest. He lifted my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. "All right. Then let us see what quality of service $2 billion can buy." With that, he lowered his head and kissed me. At that moment, my phone began vibrating wildly on the bed. It was a message from Yu Suan. "Dear sister, you must be getting beaten half to death by your husband by now. Right, hang in there. I will burn incense and pray that you return with your whole body intact." I glanced at the message, then at the handsome face inches from mine. Only one thought crossed my mind. "Yu Suan, you should burn incense for yourself." I had hit the jackpot. Mu Qianyu's kiss carried none of the violence described in the rumors. Instead, it was heated and possessive enough to cloud my thoughts. Even so, the memory of my $2 billion kept me alert. I pushed him away and glared at the man who was smiling so slyly. "Yulia, your legs work perfectly. Why pretend to be disabled and scare everyone half to death?" Mu Qianyu sat leisurely on the edge of the bed and crossed his long legs. "If I did not pretend to be disabled, how could I marry such an interesting wife? One willing to sell herself for $2 billion. Besides, the little rats in the Mu group have their eyes on the chairman's seat. I sit in a wheelchair, so they lower their guard. When the time is right, I will sweep them all up in one move. Understand?" Chill ran down my spine. Rich people really did have minds as deep as the sea. I decided that I should hold tightly to this golden thigh and obediently be his decorative wife. "When are you going to announce that your legs are fine?" I asked, timidly. Mu Qianyu raised a brow. His gaze traveled slowly over me with obvious meaning. "We will discuss that later. For now, shouldn't we fulfill our marital obligations so that our wedding night does not go to waste?" I dived under the covers and wrapped myself up like a silkworm. "Are you crazy? I married in someone else's place, not as merchandise. Do not even think about doing anything improper." Mu Qianyu laughed softly. He turned off the lights, lay down beside me, and wrapped an arm around my silkworm-shaped body. "Sleep. I have no interest in a block of wood. We can talk again when you offer yourself willingly." The next morning, I woke to the mouth-watering smell of food. When I opened my eyes, I found myself curled snugly in Mu Qianyu's arms. my limbs draped over him like an octopus. I was mortified. I tried to slip out of bed quietly, but he caught my waist and pulled me back. His sleepy voice was rough, with morning huskiness. "Up so early, dear wife? Planning to run back to your parents' house and cry?" I pouted. "Who wants to cry? I am starving." The moment I went downstairs, the sight before me nearly made me fall backward. In-laws were directing the servants as they laid out a breakfast feast long enough to feed an entire army. When Miss Mu saw me, she rushed over like a gust of wind and stuffed a powerful black card into my hand. "My daughter-in-law is awake. You worked so hard last night. That brat Qianyu is so rough and blunt. He must have exhausted you. Take this and go shopping to make yourself feel better. Even if you want to buy an entire mall, mother will indulge you." My hand trembled around the card. I had never seen money come so easily in my life. I glanced at Mu Qianyu, who was once again sitting in his wheelchair and acting innocent. This family really was a collection of genius actors. Breakfast was drowning in lovey-dovey affection. Although Mu Qianyu sat in a wheelchair, his hands peeled shrimp for me with astonishing speed. In-laws watched us with smiling eyes, as if they were enjoying an especially sentimental romance drama. Then my phone vibrated again. It was another message from my precious younger sister. "Yu Suan. Dear sister, you are still not dead. Today is the day you return to your maiden home. Father says you had better come back. Do not let the Mu family dislike you and embarrass our family." I sneered. What perfect timing. I had been wanting to go back and open their eyes. I turned to Mrs. Mu and asked sweetly, "Mother, I want to visit my parents today. May I borrow a car?" Mrs. Mu slammed her palm on the table, making the bowls and chopsticks jump. "Borrow what? You are the young madam of the Mu family. When you visit your maiden home, it must be grand and magnificent, so they know exactly how cherished my daughter-in-law is. Butler, prepare 10 Rolls Royces, 20 black-clad bodyguards, and trunks filled with gifts. Today, I will personally take my daughter-in-law back and put her in-laws in their place." Mu Qianyu and I looked at each other. A trace of amusement flickered in his eyes as he leaned close and whispered, "See, my mother is more combative than you. This visit to the Yu family is going to be very entertaining." The luxury convoy left the Mu Villa one car after another, drawing stares everywhere it passed. I sat in the leading car with Mu Qianyu. He continued to play the disabled man. His custom wheelchair had been secured inside the car, and he held my hand tightly without letting go. When we reached the gates of the Yu residence, my stepmother and Yu Suan were waiting there in anticipation. They had clearly expected me to return bruised and battered, weeping and begging for mercy. When the line of supercars stopped, the bodyguards formed a straight row and bowed in unison. I stepped out wearing the designer dress my mother-in-law had forced on me that morning, looking radiant. Mu Qianyu followed behind me in his wheelchair, pushed by a bodyguard. Though seated, his aura was enough to make anyone tremble. Yu Suan's face shifted from white to green, then red. Her mouth hung open as though a fly had flown in. "Yu Youwei, how are you? Why are you?" I smiled and adjusted my voluminous curls. "What is it, little sister?" Disappointed that I did not come back with my legs broken. "Sorry, I am not only living well, I am spoiled by my husband beyond the sky." My stepmother changed faces faster than turning a pancake. She rushed over as though she wanted to grab my hand. "Oh, my good daughter. I knew you were blessed. Look at you, so elegant and noble now." I stepped back, leaving her reaching into empty air. "Do not claim me. The 2 billion from that day bought out our relationship. I came back, only to retrieve the belongings my birth mother left behind. Once I have them, I will leave. I would not dare disturb your happy family. Mu Qianyu gave a soft cough. His sharp gaze swept over the Yu family, and his icy voice rang out. When my wife speaks, who gave you permission to interrupt? Butler, bring in the gifts. The bodyguards immediately carried in dozens of gift boxes. But instead of sweets, wine, or pastries, the boxes were filled with kidney tonics, aphrodisiacs, sedatives, and cartons of how instant noodles. My stepmother and father stared at the offerings with blank expressions. Mu Qianyu smiled faintly. I heard father-in-law is in poor health and often muddled in the head. That must be why he forced his daughter to marry in someone else's place. I brought brain supplements for him. The how instant noodles are for your family to eat slowly, so you remember the taste of poverty. Do not dream of gaining anything from the Mu family. Yu Suan trembled with fury and pointed at him. You cripple, how dare you insult my family? She is only an illegitimate daughter who married in my place. The instant she finished speaking, a sharp slap rang through the air. I had not hit her. Mrs. Mu had stepped out of the car behind us and struck Yu Suan across the face so hard that her eyelid tape shifted. Mrs. Mu flicked her wrist and lifted her chin. That slap is me teaching you in place of your parents. How dare you call my son crippled? How dare you call my daughter-in-law illegitimate? Listen carefully. Yu Youwei is the treasure of the Mu family. You are not even worthy of carrying her shoes. The entire street fell silent. Looking at my mother-in-law's back, I could only sigh in admiration. The older she was, the more formidable she became. The slap had so much force that Yu Suan clutched her face and let out a shriek. My stepmother bristled like a porcupine and tried to rush forward to claw at Mrs. S. Who? But before she could touch even the hem of her dress, 2 bodyguards blocked her. They lifted her as easily as one would lift an old hen. Mrs. Mu dusted off her sleeves, her tone disdainful. Calm down, in-law. I am merely teaching your daughter how a civilized person behaves. The Mu family may be rich enough to crack the walls of the heavens, but our household rules are strict. Girl who opens her mouth to insult her sister and brother-in-law would have been made to scrub toilets long ago in my home. My father's face turned gray. He hurried forward to mediate. Please calm down. She is young and ignorant. I will teach her properly. Mu Qianyu sat in his wheelchair, tapping the armrest with his fingers. His cold gaze swept over the 3 members of the Yu family, making them shiver. Teach her. You failed to teach her for 20 years. How exactly do you intend to do it now? Forget it. My wife's time is gold. We do not have time to stand here and watch your family drama. Where are my mother-in-law's belongings? Bring them all out. If even one item is missing, I will have a brick removed from this house. Standing beside him, I felt thoroughly refreshed. My husband really was different. Every word he spoke sounded like pearls and jade. My stepmother stammered, her eyes darting everywhere. Belongings. Your mother died a long time ago. Her things were lost long ago. How could we still have them? I stepped forward with a cold smile and pointed at the jade pendant hanging from her neck. Lost? Then, what is that dangling from your neck? Do not tell me you bought it at a market. My grandmother gave it to my mother as dowry. My mother's name, Yun, is engraved clearly on the back. My stepmother hurriedly covered her neck, her face turning white. This was a wedding anniversary gift from your father to me. Smack. This time, my father slapped my stepmother across the face. He pointed at her with trembling fingers. Take it off and give it back to Wei at once. Do you want to get our entire family killed? It turned out that although my father was cowardly, he was terrified of death, and terrified of losing money. He knew perfectly well that if he angered Mu Qianyu, his tiny company could disappear the moment Mu Group sneezed. Stepmother cried as she tore off the necklace and threw it at me. I caught it, wiped it carefully, and put it around my neck. It felt as though my mother was still beside me, protecting me. Hot enough, Mu Qianyu said suddenly, his low voice brimming with authority. According to the list my wife made, there is also a set of ruby jewelry, 2 bank books, and an old street front property registered in her mother's name. You planning to swallow them too? I looked at him in surprise. How did he know so clearly? I had not even told him the details, as if reading my mind. Mu Qianyu gave me a mischievous wink. He had apparently investigated my family all the way back to the ancestors of 8 generations ago. Yu Suan had stopped crying. Seeing how aggressively Mu Qianyu was demanding money, she decided to use a pitiful act. She crawled closer to his wheelchair, putting on a tearful, helpless expression, and speaking in a syrupy voice. Brother-in-law. No, young Master Mu, my family has been having a hard time lately. My father is weak and ill. How can you bear to force us so ruthlessly? Sister Wei is still part of this family. Is there anything wrong with her sharing a little of the family's assets? As she spoke, she deliberately adjusted her neckline in an attempt to seduce my husband. Before jealousy could rise in me, Mu Qianyu frowned and covered his nose, as though he had smelled something unbearable. He told a bodyguard, "Push me 5 meters farther away. This cheap perfume is too strong. I am allergic, Aku." His merciless reaction froze Yu Suan in place. She looked so embarrassed that she seemed ready to dig a hole and crawl into it. Mrs. Mu burst into laughter beside us. My son has such excellent taste. Fake, scheming little flirt, like you thinks she can seduce him. Go home and look in a mirror, sweetheart. That foundation is so thick it looks like a wall. Kissing you might give someone lead poisoning. Under the pressure of the Mu family's power and the fear that they would destroy the Yu family's home, my father had no choice but to grit his teeth and sign over the old street properties and return the savings. The assets I recovered totaled tens of billions, in addition to the 2 billion I had received for marrying in Yu Suan's place. I had officially become a wealthy woman. Before leaving, I looked at the cartons of How instant noodles stacked in the Yu courtyard and smiled pleasantly. Father, the 2 of you should remember to eat your How instant noodles. They are expensive. Eat them and become smarter, so you do not try to trick other people again next time. Back in the car, I happily kissed the property documents again and again. Then I looked at Mu Qianyu with sparkling eyes. Thank you. You were unbelievably cool today. I did not know you could act so well. That perfume allergy scene made me laugh so hard, I almost hurt myself. Mu Qianyu curled his lips and pinched my cheek. I was not acting. I really am allergic. Other than my wife's scent, every other woman's perfume smells unpleasant to me. His cheesy line made my heart miss a beat, and heat rose to my face. This man was truly a master at flirting. Every line hit its target. When we returned home, an unfamiliar man in a white doctor's coat was waiting in the living room. Moment, he saw Mu Qianyu. He stood and bowed respectfully. President Mu, it is time for your treatment, I asked blankly. Treatment for what? His legs work perfectly. Mu Qianyu calmly removed his suit jacket and tossed it to a servant. Then he winked at me. If I am acting, I have to act to the end. Dear wife, help me in the treatment room tonight. The doctor says I need a partner's cooperation before my legs can fully recover. He gave me a shameless look. The so-called treatment room was actually a sealed room with complete soundproofing. The instant we entered, the doctor removed his mask to reveal a very young face. He grinned. Sister-in-law, I am Lu Jin, Qianyu's childhood friend. I am not a doctor at all. You two make yourselves comfortable. I will guard the door outside. And he slipped away as quickly as an eel, leaving Mu Qianyu and me alone in the dim room. Before I had recovered from my surprise, Qianyu stood, locked the door, pulled me toward him, and pressed me onto his lap. His large hands settled restlessly at my waist. His deep, magnetic voice brushed against my ear. My wife has seen through me. Shall we begin? I shivered at the heat radiating from him. Your legs are already fine. What kind of treatment are you talking about? Let me go, you rogue. Mu Qianyu only held me tighter. He bent his head into the hollow of my neck and inhaled softly. My legs are fine, but my heart is weak. It needs you to warm it. And, he added, besides, old Master Hu's birthday banquet is tomorrow. Prepare yourself. The moment I heard birthday banquet, my eyes lit up. This was my chance to enter high society as the young madam of the Mu family. It was also a chance to see what other tricks that mother and daughter pair would dare to play. The next morning, the Mu household was in an uproar over choosing my dress. Mrs. Mu summoned an entire team of top stylists who surrounded me as though I was some rare creature. I tried outfit after outfit. In the end, they chose a wine-red mermaid gown with a high slit and sparkling diamonds, one that emphasized my figure perfectly. When Mu Qianyu watched me walk out, his eyes darkened. He muttered, "That slit is too high." "Who are you planning to let look at you?" Mrs. Mu glared at him. "Your wife is beautiful. Of course, she should show it. Are you so selfish that you want to keep her all to yourself? Today, I authorize my daughter-in-law to cut down every little vixen who dares to covet you." The banquet was held in the most luxurious 7-star hotel in the city. Lights were brilliant, and champagne seemed to flow like water. I pushed Mu Qianyu's wheelchair into the hall, instantly drawing every gaze. Whispers buzzed around us like a disturbed hive. "Look, the Mu family's cripple is here. I heard he married the unwanted eldest daughter of the Yu family. His wife is gorgeous. What a pity she married a disabled man." My grip tightened on the wheelchair handles. I was about to charge forward and argue with them when Mu Qianyu patted the back of my hand reassuringly. He lifted his eyes and swept the crowd with a cold glance. The royal pressure radiating from him made everyone fall silent and avoid his gaze. Just then, Yu Suan appeared. She wore a pure white dress and pretended to be innocent and fragile. Her arm was linked with that of a bald, pot-bellied man who looked like the kind of wealthy sponsor one could identify at a glance. She swayed over to us and said sarcastically, "Oh sister, I thought you were at home, taking care of your disabled husband. I did not expect you to be thick-skinned enough to come here for free food. Let me introduce you. This is President Wang, my new boyfriend." President Wang stared at me, swallowing heavily as he smiled in a lecherous way. "Little sister, you are so beautiful. Marrying a cripple is such a waste. Come with me instead. I will take care of you completely." Heat rushed to my head. Before I could speak, Mu Qianyu suddenly lifted the glass of red wine in his hand and splashed it directly across President Wang's face. Movement was so fast and clean that no one had time to react. His voice was colder than ancient ice. "Your filthy mouth is not worthy of being washed with wine. I am wasting it on you. Get out of my sight before I decide you do not deserve to keep using that mouth." President Wang, drenched in wine and humiliated, tried to rush forward, only to be seized by Mu family bodyguards like a chick. Yu Suan shrieked. Mu Qianyu Are you insane? How dare you hit President Wang? Do you know the consequences? Mu Qianyu smiled contemptuously and took out a handkerchief to wipe his slender fingers. Wang Corporation, company that owes Mu Group 500 billion and is on the verge of bankruptcy. Fine. Since you like it so much. By tomorrow morning, Wang Corporation will disappear from the business map. Consider it my greeting gift to my sister-in-law. The entire hall erupted. No one had expected the so-called cripple of the Mu family to speak with such force. I stood beside him and silently screamed in my heart. He was too handsome. My husband was the best. The peak of the tension. An elderly yet commanding voice rang out from the staircase. Who dares cause trouble at my birthday banquet? Guests parted to both sides. An old man with white hair descended with a cane. It was old Master Hu, the host of the banquet. Yu Suan ran toward him at once, weeping as she complained. Old Master Hu, he is abusing his power and beating my boyfriend. You have to stand up for us. I held my breath, uncertain whose side the old man would choose. Mu Qianyu, however, remained completely calm, as though he were watching a comedy. My side. He gave me a brief teasing pinch beneath the fabric of my high-slit dress, making me jump. This shameless man was still fooling around in the middle of a crisis. Old Master Hu approached with a pressure that made the crowd part before him. Yu Suan seemed to find a lifeline. She rushed to cling to his leg and cried miserably. Old Master Hu, you must uphold justice. This cripple from the Mu family is bullying people. He injured President Wang and threatened to bankrupt Wang Corporation. He is arrogant beyond cure. I secretly reached for a wine bottle on a nearby table. If this old man raised his cane against my husband, I would protect Mu Qianyu, no matter what. I had married in someone else's place for money. Protecting the principal was simply professional responsibility. But life was never as Yu Suan dreamed. Old Master Hu looked at her, as though she were rubbish stuck to the sole of his shoe. Then turned toward Mu Qianyu and changed his expression completely. He laughed warmly. You little brat, we have not met in so long, and you are still as difficult as ever. You come to my banquet and cannot give me even a little face. If you want trash cleaned up, tell the bodyguards. Why dirty your own hands? The entire hall seemed to have been struck by lightning. Yu Suan stood with her mouth open, tears and snot still smeared across her face. I stared at Mu Qianyu as well. He merely smiled faintly. Old Master Hu, it is not that I refuse to give you face. This fly has been buzzing around my wife's ears. I was afraid she would go deaf, so I swatted it dead. At that moment, President Wang's phone began to vibrate violently in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands. His face went from red to purple, then to a deathly white. What? The bank froze our assets. Our partners cancelled their contracts. The stock price crashed. Mu Group bought all the shares. Impossible. It has only been 5 minutes. His phone slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. He rushed to Mu Qianyu's wheelchair and dropped to his knees, bowing his head again and again. Young Master Mu, President Mu, I was blind, I was wrong, please be merciful and leave me a way to survive. Wang Corporation is my life's work. Mu Qianyu leaned lazily against the chair, still holding my hand. His voice was cold as a judge's verdict. Your life's work. When you used that filthy mouth to insult my wife, did you think about the consequences? I told you. You may provoke me, but touch even a strand of Yu Youwei's hair, and I will not spare you, even if heaven itself comes to plead. Guards, take this trash out. Do not let it dirty old Master Hu's eyes. 2 bodyguards, huge as temple guardians, appeared immediately and dragged President Wang away. His cries faded into the distance, making everyone else tremble. When Yu Suan saw the strongest support behind her collapse in an instant, she panicked. She looked around, then suddenly rushed toward me, trying to make a scene. Sister, you are my biological sister. Can you really bear to watch me be bullied like this? Ask brother-in-law to spare President Wang. I know, you still hate me for forcing you to marry in my place. But you are happy now, aren't you? Watching her act made me sick. Before I could answer, Mu Qianyu cut across her path. His sharp eyes made Yu Suan stop. He spoke each word clearly. You are mistaken. Yu Youwei is not your sister. From the day you and your parents sold her to the Mu family for 2 billion, she became a member of the Mu family and severed all ties with your rotten Yu household. Do not call me brother-in-law. It gives me goosebumps. A cheap woman like you is not even worthy of carrying my wife's shoes. Old Master Hu nodded in approval. Well said. You sound exactly like your grandfather did back then. Guards, escort this young lady out as well. From this day onward, members of the Yu family are forbidden from appearing at any event held by the Huo family or the Mu family. The guards dragged Yu Suan away as she screamed and struggled. Her miserable state was beyond description. I watched with deep satisfaction, then leaned toward Mu Qianyu and whispered, You are ruthless. But I like it. 10 points for protecting your wife. He pinched my waist lightly and gave me a sly smile. If you like it, reward me tonight. I do not accept cash. I only accept payment in kind. After the banquet, I pushed Mu Qianyu toward the car beneath the admiring and fearful stares of the guests. Moment we were inside, he pulled me into his arms and kissed my cheek. My wife performed very well today. You did not disgrace the Mu family. I pouted. You were not bad yourself. One phone call wiped out an entire corporation. Are you really a cripple, or are you the final boss? Mu Qianyu smiled mysteriously. You tell me. But the fun is not over. The little rats in the family will not be able to sit still after seeing what happened today. Tomorrow, we will have another good show to watch. When we returned to the Mu villa, the atmosphere inside was taut as a drawn bowstring. Group of unfamiliar people filled the living room. At their head stood a middle-aged man who resembled my father-in-law, but had a far more calculating face. This had to be second Uncle Mu Zensing, the man eyeing the chairman's position. Moment, he saw us. He slammed his hand on the table and stood. Mu Qianyu, you are impressive indeed. You dared to use the family's authority on your own to suppress Wang Corporation. Do you know how much your reckless behavior has harmed the Mu family's reputation? The shareholders are deeply dissatisfied. Today, I am here, on behalf of the board, to depose you. In-laws sat nearby, their faces red with anger. Before they could speak, Mu Qianyu laughed. The sound echoed through the vast room, steeped in mockery. He signaled for me to push his wheelchair forward until he faced Mu Zensing directly. There was no warmth left in his gaze, only the ruthlessness of a wolf king. Pose me. Second uncle, are you old and muddled, or are you dreaming in broad daylight? Do you think the handful of insignificant shareholders you bought can do anything to me? Wife show second uncle. I understood at once. I took the folder Mu Qianyu had given me earlier from my handbag and threw it down on the table in front of Mu Zensing. Please, look carefully. Second uncle. These are records proving that you embezzled 5 trillion from company funds over the past 3 years, along with a list of your illegal transactions with competitors. My husband has collected everything. Would you rather resign voluntarily and go back to the countryside to raise ducks, or would you prefer that he send this to the investigators so you can spend your retirement in prison? Mu Zensing stared at the documents. Sweat poured down his forehead. His hands shook so badly that he could barely hold the papers, and he could not form a complete sentence. He had never expected the disabled nephew he had looked down on for years to hold his fatal weakness so tightly. How did you get these? I hid everything so carefully, Mu Zensing stammered. Mu Qianyu smiled, the expression wicked yet cold enough to pierce bone. Did you really think using your mistress's account to launder money in Switzerland was discreet? Sorry, my hacker needed only 3 minutes to find everything about her, including her measurements, let alone the numbers in your bank accounts. The shareholders around us erupted into chaos. They changed sides with dizzying speed and began condemning second uncle in order to win Mu Qianyu's favor. Owing he had nowhere left to retreat, Mu Zensing played the family card. He rushed to kneel at my father-in-law's feet and cried, "Elder brother, save me. I am your biological younger brother. Can you really watch me go to prison?" I was only confused for a moment. My father-in-law calmly sipped his dragon well tea. He did not even glance at his disgraced brother. You were confused for 3 years and embezzled 5 trillion. And you call that a moment? I am handing this matter entirely to my daughter-in-law. She is the roof of this family. Whatever she says, I will obey. Mu Zensing went still. He looked at me with pleading eyes. I smiled kindly. Do not worry, second uncle. I am very fair. I have already called a police vehicle to pick you up. Inside, meals and water will be served to you. You can retire in peace there. No need to thank me. The moment I finished speaking, the siren of a police car sounded outside the villa. 2 officers entered, handcuffed Mu Zensing, and led him away before the stunned shareholders. Mu Qianyu looked at the remaining people. His voice was light, but every word carried weight. And the rest of you? Would you like to stay for dinner? Or go with second uncle? I never let my companions leave alone. The shareholders were terrified. They bowed and apologized before fleeing as fast as mice who had seen a cat. Mrs. Mu clapped excitedly and ran to hug me. My daughter-in-law is so impressive. Tonight, I will reward you with another seaside villa. I grinned. Being the daughter-in-law of a wealthy family was truly stressful. The pressure came from having to figure out how to spend all the money. That night, after we celebrated our victory, I returned to my room, intending to bathe, only for Mu Qianyu to block the door. He braced one hand against the frame, caging me against his strong chest. His eyes burned as he stared at me. Wife, you have finished handling family business. Now it is time to handle ours. I have been patient for a long time. I blushed and tried to slip away. But he lifted me effortlessly and laid me down on the soft bed. He bent close, his warm breath brushing my ear. You protected me very well today. It is only proper that I repay you with myself. At night, the room filled with the warmth of new-light intimacy. Only then did I understand what it meant for a wolf to wear sheep's clothing. Mu Qianyu in bed and Mu Qianyu in a wheelchair during the day seemed like 2 completely different people. His stamina had left me crying out and begging for mercy. The next morning, I woke with my waist aching. The culprit was already fully dressed, refreshed, and reading the newspaper beside me. When he saw that I was awake, he bent down and kissed my forehead with a loud smack. Good morning, wife. Today, I will take you to the company. I will officially announce your identity as the chairman's wife. So the annoying bees in the office know to stay away from me. I nodded lazily. I had already climbed onto the tiger's back. Since I was here, I might as well go. What was there to fear? Mu Group. Mu Qianyu continued his habit of sitting in a wheelchair. He said, that, since he was acting, he should finish the role properly. I pushed him through the grand lobby, where employees whispered and stared at us with the curiosity of searchlights. When we reached the private elevator for the chairman, a secretary in a revealing outfit and an extremely short skirt swayed over to Mu Qianyu. Her voice was sweet as syrup. "President Mu, here is your coffee. I brewed it exactly the way you like. Please try it." She deliberately leaned forward and treated me as though I were invisible. Mu Qianyu frowned. Without even looking at her, he said coldly, "You are fired." The secretary froze, tears filling her eyes. "Why? What did I do wrong?" He pointed at me. "Your cheap perfume made my wife sneeze. And your skirt is so unpleasant to look at that it hurts my wife's eyes. Is that enough of a reason?" Standing beside him, I fought so hard not to laugh that I nearly injured myself internally. My husband was truly a master at eradicating green tea. As I pushed him into the elevator, I teased him. "You are so cruel. She made coffee for you with good intentions." Mu Qianyu pulled me onto his lap and kissed my lips lightly. What good intentions? It was only another attempt at seduction. In my eyes, only my wife is the most beautiful and the most fragrant. When we reached the executive meeting room, the department directors were already waiting. The moment they saw Mu Qianyu being pushed in, several showed their contempt openly. An old director, with a gruff voice, barked, "Young Master Mu, this is an important meeting about a billion-dollar project. You are disabled. What are you doing here? Go home and let your wife take care of you, instead of getting in the way." Mu Qianyu said nothing. He signaled for me to push his wheelchair to the seat of honor. Then he slowly stood and stretched. His tall figure made the entire room stare in shock. He walked around the conference table. The sound of his leather shoes against the floor struck like heavy hammers against the guilty hearts around him. He stopped in front of the director, who had spoken, planted both hands on the table, leaned close, and smiled coldly. "Director Chen, who did you call disabled? Who did you tell to go home? I think you are the one who should take early retirement. I acquired this billion-dollar project last week. Why are you all sitting here, learning who will be fired next?" Room fell silent. Only then did they understand that the Mu family's tiger had awakened. And it was talking. Mu Qianyu turned to me and announced clearly, "This is Yu Youwei, my legal wife. She is also the holder of 40% of Mu Group's shares, which I transferred to her this morning. From now on, her word is an imperial decree. Anyone who dares defy her will end up like Wang Corporation did yesterday." I was stunned. 40% of the shares. I had become the most powerful chairman's wife in the city overnight. As I looked at the employees below, their eyes filled with fear and worship, I knew my life had officially turned a page. A golden page titled "Spoiled Beyond Measure." With 40% of Mu Group's shares in my hand, even my footsteps felt heavier. Not because of the pressure of managing them, but because of the weight of money on my shoulders. Sitting in the enormous chairman's office, I sipped an avocado smoothie while watching Mu Qianyu diligently approve documents in my place. Every so often, he looked up at me and smiled ingratiatingly. "Wife, just sit and play. Making money is a man's job. You only need to work hard at spending it." I nodded in agreement. That is the truth of my life. Then my phone exploded with notifications, one after another, like Lunar New Year firecrackers. When I opened it, I found my name occupying the top trending search. Mu family's young madam. An unfilial daughter who abandoned her sick father and seized family property to support her husband's family. I frowned and opened the live stream. On the screen were 3 familiar faces. My father lay on a hospital bed. looking as though he were at death's door, as he groaned weakly. "My stepmother," cried, as though she were attending a funeral. Yu Suan held a microphone and spoke in an aggrieved voice. "Everyone. After my sister married into a rich family, she turned her back on us. My father is critically ill and needs money for surgery. Not only did she refuse to give him a single cent, she forced him to sell the house and took all of his retirement money. Now, we have to live under a bridge. My father is about to die, but she is still enjoying herself." Comments below were filled with strangers cursing me. They called me ungrateful and greedy. Some even demanded a boycott of Mu Group. Mu Qianyu glanced at the screen. His eyes darkened, and cold killing intent radiated from him. "These cockroaches are asking for it. I will have someone shut down the live stream and throw the entire family out of the city." I quickly caught his hand and smiled coldly. "Do not do that. They will only say, 'We are strong, arming the weak, because we have something to hide.' They want to play victims. Fine. I will let them finish the performance. Prepare a car. We are going to pay your dear father-in-law a visit. Bring a team of lawyers and reporters too, so everyone can watch properly." Half an hour later, Mu Qianyu's Maybach stopped in front of the city's most expensive private hospital, where Yu Suan was broadcasting her tearful show, "Moment, my husband." And I appeared with a line of black-clad bodyguards. Reporters, who had been swarming around like flies, rushed to take photos. I adjusted my sunglasses and linked my arm through Mu Qianyu's. He had made a miraculous recovery and walked normally now, using it to project authority. As we entered the hospital room, Yu Suan jumped when she saw me, but instantly put on her pitiful expression again and rushed over, trying to grab my clothes. "Sister, you are finally here. Hurry and give us money to save father. He may not make it." Mu Qianyu flicked her hand away, as though brushing off a germ. "Stay 2 meters away from my wife. Your saliva is poisonous." I walked calmly to the bedside and looked at my father, who lay with his eyes shut, breathing heavily amid a web of tubes. I turned to the department head, who was trembling nearby. "Doctor, how is my father? Is he really about to go, so I can order a coffin?" The doctor glanced nervously at Mu Qianyu's icy face, then at the medical records in his hands. Young Madam Mu. The patient only has indigestion from eating too much seafood. All of his vital signs are completely normal." Room went completely still. The hum of the fan could be heard clearly. Reporters and the livestream audience were dumbfounded. Indigestion, yet he had performed like a terminal cancer patient. I burst out laughing and clapped. "Wonderful. Father, you ate too much seafood and only got bloated. Why mobilize the entire internet and hire people to cry for you? Were you planning to trick people into donating money so you could buy more lobster?" My father's lie had been exposed. His face turned red, and he sprang upright like a coiled spring, pointing at me. "You unfilial daughter. I raised you, and now you join outsiders to humiliate me." Mu Qianyu stepped in front of me and looked down at him arrogantly. "You raised her, according to my investigation. From the age of 5, Yu Youwei had to work part-time to earn her own tuition. The living expenses you gave her were less than what you spent feeding Yu Suan's pet dog. And the 50 billion bride price the Mu family sent over. You burned it all at a casino in Macau last week. What nerve do you have to ask my wife for money now?" At his signal, an assistant activated a large display in the hospital room. It immediately showed video footage of my father gambling wildly at a casino, his arm around a strange woman, as he laughed loudly. The date shown in the footage was precisely when he had claimed to be critically ill and in need of surgery. Yu Suan and my stepmother went pale and tried to slip away. But bodyguards blocked the door. The internet turned on them in an instant. Comments cursing the Yu family poured in so quickly that they seemed to cover the entire screen. What a disgusting family. Poor Yu Youwei, it is amazing she did not go mad living in that house. President Mu is incredible. Protecting his wife comes first. I looked at the three of them, trembling and huddled together, without the slightest pity, and I announced to the cameras, I am formally suing the Yu family for defamation, fraud, and misappropriation of assets. The 50 billion bride price you gambled away was money from the Mu family. I will ask the court to freeze the rest of your assets to satisfy the judgment. Good luck in prison. After dealing with the mess, Mu Qianyu and I left the hospital to the sound of applause from the crowd. In the car, I leaned my tired head against his shoulder and sighed. It is finally over. I thought after taking that bride price, they would know how to repent. Mu Qianyu kissed my hair and said gently, rivers and mountains may change, but a person's nature is hard to change. Do not be sad for people who are unworthy. You still have me, father, mother, and the entire Mu family. We are all here to support you. I looked up at him with bright eyes. Why are you so good to me? At first, I thought you only married me to fool the world. Mu Qianyu looked deeply into my eyes. His dark gaze held an ocean of feeling. He smiled, a smile that melted my heart. Do you think I would spend 50 billion to marry a stranger? I noticed you 5 years ago, when you rescued a little cat in the rain outside the school gate. I was sitting in my car watching you. Even then, I thought that this girl had to become Mu Qianyu's wife. I froze. 5 years ago. So our fate had begun so long ago. Then why did you only appear now? I asked. He pinched my nose. At that time, my leg was truly injured. I did not want to become a burden to you. I spent years in physical therapy, rebuilt Mu Group, and waited until I was strong enough to protect you before I dared to announce that I was looking for a wife. I knew your father was greedy and would definitely force you to marry in Yu Suan's place. Everything was within my calculations. The only thing I did not calculate was that you would be even more adorable than I imagined. His confession made me both moved and amused. So I had been a little fish swimming into this old fox's love net long ago, without realizing it. You are so scheming, I said, lightly punching his chest with tears in my eyes. Mu Qianyu caught my hand and kissed each of my fingers. Scheming with the whole world, but gentle only with you. Is that all right, wife? Car became so sweet that the driver quietly raised the divider to avoid getting a sugar rush. I nestled into his arms, feeling like the happiest woman in the world. He would bear the storms outside. I only had to be a queen spoiled beyond measure. Then I suddenly remembered something important. I sat up. What about Yu Suan? She will never sit still. I have a feeling she will do something reckless. Mu Qianyu's lips curved, and danger flashed in his eyes. She dares. If she touches even a strand of your hair, I will make her regret ever breathing the same air as you. Thanks to the self-destructive hospital livestream, my father and stepmother soon received long-term prison sentences for fraud, misappropriation of assets, and defamation. On the day they were taken away, I heard that my stepmother cried until her false eyelashes nearly washed away, while my father fainted again and again from low blood pressure. Yu Suan alone had escaped first. She disappeared like an eel slipping through mud. Wanted notices were posted across the city, but there was no trace of her. Mu Qianyu feared that the crazed woman would do something desperate, so he increased the number of bodyguards around me around the clock. They even stood guard outside the bathroom when I went in. I felt like a rare animal in a zoo. To dispel the gloomy mood, my in-laws decided to hold a wedding of the century for us. It would make up for our simple earlier ceremony and warn everyone eyeing my position as the young madam of the Mu family on the wedding day. The guests included heads of state, international billionaires, and A-list stars. Helicopters filled the sky, and yachts packed the harbor. I sat in the dressing room, wearing a diamond-studded wedding gown custom-made by a royal designer. It was so heavy that I felt as though I were carrying several villas on my body. Mrs. Wu stood beside me, dabbing at her tears as she placed a jadeite jewelry set worth a fortune on me. Daughter-in-law, you are so beautiful today. More beautiful than a beauty queen. When you walk down the aisle later, be careful not to fall. This jewelry is very heavy. If you fall, mother will feel terrible for you. I did not know whether to laugh or cry. My mother-in-law was always so adorably practical. The aisle was decorated with white roses imported from France, creating a romantic scene straight out of a fairy tale. Mu Qianyu stood at the end of the flower-lined path in a white suit, so handsome that my heart seemed to stop for several seconds. He looked at me with tenderness and devotion, as though I were the only person in his world. When the priest asked, "Do you take this man as your husband?" I had not yet answered when a piercing scream came from the entrance. I object. "He is mine." Everyone turned. Girl, in a torn wedding dress, stood there with disheveled hair, holding a fruit knife, as she rushed forward like an arrow. It was none other than Yu Suan, the wanted fugitive. She screamed wildly. "Yu Youwei, you stole my husband. That position is mine. I will kill you." The guests screamed in alarm. The bodyguards were about to rush forward when Mu Qianyu raised a hand to stop them. He watched Yu Suan charge toward us without any visible emotion, and perhaps even with a trace of pity. When Yu Suan was only a few steps away from me, she raised the knife to stab me. Smack! Her high heel flew from somewhere and struck the center of her forehead. Yu Suan staggered and fell to the ground. The person who had thrown the shoe was none other than my mother-in-law. Mrs. Wu removed her other heel, gathered up her skirt, and rushed forward like a heroine. She pointed at Yu Suan. "You crazy girl. I have put up with you long enough. You dare bring a knife to my son's wedding. Are you tired of living? Guards, tie her up for me." Yu Suan was pinned down by the bodyguards, but she continued screaming and struggling. "Let me go, I am Mu Qianyu's real wife. The engagement was mine." "You were fooled by that vixen." Mu Qianyu walked over and looked down at her. His voice was cold as ice. "An engagement? Do you think I am an object for you to trade around? Let me tell you this. Even without the engagement, the person I would have chosen was Yu Youwei. From beginning to end, you have been nothing more than a clown in my eyes. Why? Why do you love her? What does she have that I do not?" Yu Suan cried desperately. Mu Qianyu gripped my hand and smiled. "Because she is kind, while you have the heart of a snake. Because she loves the real me, while you only love the Mu family's wealth. Take her away. The police are waiting outside the gate. I hope she reflects on herself in prison." Yu Suan was dragged away in utter humiliation. Her cries grew softer and softer, then disappeared. Peace returned to the wedding hall. I looked at Mu Qianyu and let out a breath. It is finally over. I thought there would be a little bloodshed today. He kissed my forehead. With me here, no one is allowed to stain our happy day. Now shall we continue? You still have not said that you agree. I do. I shouted, without the slightest hesitation. Applause thundered through the venue. Fireworks streaked across the sky. Mu Qianyu and I shared a heartfelt kiss beneath the witness of thousands. On our second wedding night. I lay in his arms, turning the diamond ring on my finger, and asking softly, "How? I am rich enough to crack the walls of heaven. Your parents pamper me like a fragile egg, and you put me above your head. I am afraid I will become spoiled." Mu Qianyu laughed softly and tightened his arms around my waist. "Then I will spoil you. The entire Mu family will let you make trouble, as long as you are happy." "But, wife, my parents are eager to hold a grandchild. How about we cooperate and make them a little princess? All right?" I said with a laugh, my heart full of happiness. Who could have imagined that the absurd substitute marriage of that year would give me such a perfect ending? I had gone from a girl abandoned by her family to a woman with a loving husband, considerate in-laws, and most importantly, more money than I could ever spend.